Hi, this is Brett Ingram, award-winning entrepreneur, and today I want to share with you back of the napkin market research for starting a business. So what exactly is market research? Market research is quite simply figuring out the basic idea in terms of whether or not there is a viable saleability for the product that you're going to be selling. Is the demand large enough for it that you can make enough sales? What does the competitive landscape look like in terms of which competitors are already taking up part of that market and who's selling what to who? So basically the idea is figuring out who we want to sell to, figuring out how big that market is, figuring out how fragmented it is, who the biggest competitors are, and figuring out whether or not ultimately it's viable for us to launch a business in that market. You know, a lot of times when people start a business, they start it based on a passion or a hobby, but they don't really consider whether or not they could really make it a go. And they don't realize how large or small their potential is based on the market research or lack thereof. So it's super important because what market research tells us is whether or not the business that we want to go into is viable. It tells us whether or not we can make the kind of money we want to be able to make, what sort of the ceiling is for it, what the floor is, how hard it's going to be to break into it based on who's there, and it's going to help us get really clear on who our target customers are. So if you think about it in terms of its relative importance, think about if you were building a house. If you were building a house, you don't just start pulling out, concrete and pouring and then start throwing up 2x4s. The first thing you need to do is make sure that you have a lot that's large enough. If the lot isn't big enough, if you want a 3,500 square foot house and you have a lot of land that's only 1,500 square feet, it's never going to fit. The best dream in the world for the most amazing dream house you can think of is never going to work if you want to try to fit it on a lot where it isn't going to fit. And so the important thing is to sort of understand before we get into things and before we start to get too deep into it, whether or not, first of all, the potential is there that we hope and we think is. You also, when you're building a house, want a blueprint, right? So not only do you want to know that the land is there, but you also want to kind of know where you're headed, like what materials you're going to need, what size and where the measurements are going to go and all that kind of stuff. Marketing is exactly the same thing, right? We don't need to get really like hardcore with this, and we don't have to get totally in the weeds and spend, weeks and weeks doing market research. But if we don't at least have a general idea, then we're going on a passion, a gut, and an ambition, and we're sort of going blind into it and then hoping that we can carve out enough of a niche. One of the things that I had developed was a video production software, video editing software. And the reason that I created it is because I felt as though Camtasia had great user friendliness, but it didn't really allow you to make great videos. It was more of a screen capturing type software. And then you had stuff like Adobe After Effects, and that had awesome capability, but it was so complicated and difficult to use. So I tried to create something in the middle. I looked at the market and I said, okay, here's where we are. And over the course of a few years, I built it up and I kept adding features and trying to make it better and better and more user-friendly. And I got to a point with it where I had to make a decision. Did I want to go all in on this? I mean, I had already invested a lot of time and I already invested a lot of money. So it'd be easy to want to just keep going full steam ahead with this video producer because ultimately I already had all of that invested in it. And we never want to sort of walk away from something that we've invested. At the same time, because our time had passed, it was important to again do some market research to decide, was it smart to really go all in on this in terms of resources and funds and build a team and all that other stuff, or was it smarter to allocate my resources somewhere else? And when I did the new level of market research, what I realized is Canva has their own video producer. There are a bunch of other video software things that have come out that are free to basically use. So the competition has gotten really fierce And there are some really big name companies that are actually getting into it. In addition to that, Camtasia has moved more and more toward an all-purpose video creator and away from just a screen capture thing. And stuff is starting to go more and more online and web-based. So it was a tough decision to make, but based on the market research, I didn't want to throw good money after bad and chase something just because I had done it. And so doing the market research helped me understand this is a really competitive landscape. I'm smarter to go and sell this to somebody else and work on something different, because ultimately without a gigantic team and a gigantic budget, and I don't really feel like trying to raise those kinds of funds, then it would be hard to compete. The same idea applies even if we're just starting out with a business. We don't need to worry about it at that level. If we're just trying to build a business and we want to be able to make money and provide for our family, we're not trying to conquer the world, well, maybe we don't need a gigantic industry with zero competition. At the same time, we just want to make sure that we're being smart. If there are 3 or 4 established competitors right in our neighborhood for something, and they have good reputation and a loyal following, we probably don't want to open a 4th one with the same thing in the same neighborhood, right? Because we're going to struggle there. The track is already laid. There's already people there that are doing it. So unless we have something better or fancier or some sort of seismic shift in what we're doing, it's going to be hard to compete. So that's the long story short about why market research is really important. Otherwise, we can look up and find that we poured all this money and time into something that ultimately is going to fail anyway because it never had a chance. Okay, and so the thing about market research is if we do just a general, like sort of back of the napkin version of it, where it's really simple and easy and quick, at least we can get a general understanding of our business, of viability and a sanity check. Are we on the right track doing this business, or are we out of our minds? Is there no chance for this thing to succeed? So market research is crucial for understanding our target market and setting our business up for success. And basically what it involves is collecting and analyzing information about our industry, our competitors, and our potential customers, right? Because that's really what we want to do. We want to size it up to figure out what percentage of these customers, how many are there? What percentage of them can we reasonably get, right? So how much money can we make? So there are 2 types of market research. There's primary and secondary. Primary is stuff like surveys and questionnaires, interviews and focus groups and observations. That stuff is all very time consuming. It's expensive. We're not really going to focus on those things, and I don't recommend that you do either, unless you're thinking this idea I've got is an Amazon.com type idea, right? We're going to be shooting for the moon. We're going to raise hundreds of millions in financing. Then you need to know every nook and cranny of your market. You need to know everything about it. And you really need to know whether your product or service is viable if you expect to be able to generate that kind of money. I'm really talking more about the smaller business, digital business, the startup, those kinds of things. And in those particular cases, particularly if they're self-funded, there's a much easier, quicker way to do some market research. And that is with secondary research. Now, secondary research is easily found online. So the great thing about it is, unlike in years past where you would have had to hunt for this information, it's fast, it's easy, and it's cheap to get it. So we're going to talk about stuff like industry reports, where we can look for published market research and trends in our industry, competitor analysis, where we can review competitors' websites, social media, customer reviews to understand their strengths and weaknesses, and demographic and economic data, right? All this stuff is publicly available, government databases, industry associations, and other sources that are going to help us gather information on our target market's demographics and spending habits. And when we have that piece of information, we're going to be in really, really good shape. So here's the general approach to simple market research for any business and every business. And it's worth spending a day, a couple of days, whatever, to do this upfront before you get too deep into it. So here's how we can approach it. And there are 6 key areas or questions to consider, and then some resources we're going to talk about. So the first is, who is your target customer or market? Hopefully you've thought about this if you're considering starting a business. But we need to know not just the general idea of, oh, I wanted, people that are dog owners in my town. Okay, that's fine. But in general, we want to know a little bit more detail, like the demographics. We want to know who our actual avatar of our customer is, what their average age range is, right? Their gender, their income level, their education. These are all things that are going to be relevant when we're trying to advertise and market to them. It's going to help us identify where they hang out, and it's going to help us identify commonality. So we're going to be able to find them and speak to them on their level where they are, right? Because how are you going to market to an 18-year-old, right, that is unemployed with a high school, diploma or GED is going to be very different than the way you're going to market to a 55-year-old, person making $500,000 a year with a PhD. The marketing things are going to be completely different. It's not better or worse. It's just the fact that we need to understand our market so we're able to figure out how we can approach them in a way that they're going to be receptive. So we need to understand that stuff. We want to find out what are their needs and preferences. Now, again, some of this stuff can be done online. Like we can go on a Facebook group for, dog lovers or whatever, right? Say that's our market. And we can go in and we can join as many dog, training and dog loving forums and groups and chats and everything else that we can find. We can look at every website and blog about this stuff. Look at what the people are writing, look at what the people are commenting, right? Any and every media that's out there, any website, resource, association, every dog owners association, right, is going to have a membership base. They're going to be talking about stuff. There's going to be forums. There's going to be newsletters. These are all things that we want to get deep into our own market. So as though we were our own customer, so we can understand the conversations that are going on already. What are people talking about that they need? What are their frustrations? What are their preferences? And specifically, we can keep an eye and an ear open for our competitors' names and how they come up and how they're referenced. Is the reputation generally good? Is the reputation generally bad? Are they usually complaints or praise or, glowing reviews and accolades or whatever? These are all things, products that they've used that currently exist, what their frustrations are with them, what they wish they had, stuff like that. And how do they make their purchasing decisions? Are these people that generally go to brick and mortar stores with their pocketbook in hand? Or are they online shoppers? Do they like to, browse a catalog and shop that way? There are a variety of different ways that people do purchasing decisions and shopping, and those are all really important. Do they make a purchase decision with their spouse or with their kids? Are they people from demographics that are parents, right? Do they have children? These are all things that are very relevant. Are they homeowners or renters? Because all these things are going to weigh into their purchase decisions. And it's going to depend on how much they want to spend, how they want to spend it, and everything else. When we start to understand this, we start to get a little bit more of a clear picture. What are pain points that in specifically our product or service might be able to solve? If it doesn't already, is there a way that if we see a common pain point coming up again and again, or frustration, is there a way that we can build that into our product so we are able to solve that in advance, thereby creating a competitive advantage that our competitors can't match because the existing products out there don't offer it. So the first thing we want to do is get very clear on who our customer is. And the way we can do that, the best way to do that, is to get involved online, to find YouTube channels, podcasts, blogs, Facebook groups, forums, associations, any association that deals with all these people and has a membership base. We want to be connected to all of that. We want to consume that information and consume their content so we can see exactly what the conversation is. Anything with a live forum type conversation going on, we want to get embedded in that so we can be real time listening in on what's going on and contributing. The second area is to analyze our competition. So once we have a general idea of that, we want to find out who our direct and indirect competitors are. Who are the people that they're currently buying from that we would want them to buy from us instead? So they're selling a competing product, or something that fills the same competing need that what we're doing, right? So either way, anything that would take money out of our pocket or that we need to take money out of their pocket to get these customers, who are they currently shopping with? What is our competitive advantage? What does our product or service offer have that theirs doesn't? How do they position themselves? Are they the low cost leader, or are they the high end, like blue chip version of it? You know, when Ben and Jerry's came about, people thought you're crazy to sell ice cream at $5 a pint. No one's ever going to buy that. And they believed that there was a flank on the super premium level for ice cream, and they crushed it. So the fact of the matter is, we want to see how our competitors position themselves and what we can do to learn from them and either use what makes sense for us or adopt it and change it to what we need for it to be for us. So we want to see what the competitive landscape looks like, who the biggest competitors are, if possible, what their market share is, and what their reputation is. What are the Yelp reviews? What are their online reviews? What are online forums saying about them? What are their product reviews like? You know, all of those kinds of things. The third area we want to look at is we want to evaluate our own product or service and see how it meets the needs of our target market. Now that we really understand who our competitors are, we understand who our target market is, how does our existing product, the way we wanted to offer it, sit with the market? Are they going to buy it? Or is it just going to be another product in a crowded field of other products? Are there gaps in the market that your business can fill? That's what Ben and Jerry's did. They went in with the super premium and they went above what everybody thought. And now people just accept it. They're like, oh yeah, of course. I mean, who wouldn't pay that for ice cream? When they were trying it, it was unheard of. Nobody was selling on a large scale at the price point that they were selling at. But they decided to give it a shot. They believed that if they put real ingredients in there and they packed it with flavor and made it really good, that everybody would want it. And they had some quirky marketing and stuff to go with it. So it doesn't have to be a price thing, higher or lower. It can be service. It can be features of the product, benefits of the product, guarantees, returns, whatever, right? Any of those kinds of things. And we want to see how sensitive our potential customers are to price changes. Do they tend to be elastic or inelastic? Does demand change when the prices go up? You know, is there an opportunity to come in at the lower price or at the higher price? And those are all things that we want to consider. The fourth thing, and this doesn't apply to many industries, but it is very important to consider in case it does, is the legal and regulatory environment. If whatever you're selling has legal or regulatory factors that affect the industry, you need to get in on that and understand it completely. Not only what the current regulations are, but also what the trends are and what the pending potential changes are. So for example, if you want to sell something and you know that your state is considering a ban on that kind of product, right? You're going to sell vapes or whatever, right? And you know that they want to put a ban on vapes, it's a risky industry to get involved in. Because the fact of the matter is, if they pass that legislation, they could put you out of business tomorrow, right? And so whereas if you wanted to do something with marijuana or whatever, and your state is about to legalize it, well, that's totally opposite. Now there's a huge opportunity. So we want to figure that out. We want to make sure that we're able to comply with relevant laws and regulations. The fifth element or area we want to look at is market trends and forecasts. So we might know today where everything sits. Great. This is a great market. When I got into the PC market, it was huge. It was great. Then it got super, super competitive, and it actually, the market wasn't growing anymore. It got very mature. So we want to look at what our trends and forecasts are. What are the current trends in the industry, but how is it expected to change in the future? If you're starting a business today, you're not going to get to where you really want to be with it probably for a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years or longer. So if you have a 2-year shelf life to make it all happen, otherwise your industry is going to collapse, that's a scary place to be. So we want to make sure that we're at least aware of that. And then the sixth area is financial projections. Is there a demand for the product or service that we want to offer? Is that demand growing or shrinking? What are the estimated costs and revenue? Can we make money with it? This is one of the famous ones on Shark Tank. How much do you make per unit? Because they know if it costs $100 and you can only sell it for $105, there's no margin there. You're not going to be able to make any money. If there are any hiccups in your industry, you're dead. You're going to be underwater. So there has to be a healthy enough profit margin that you can survive. And then let's talk a little bit about tools and resources, right? So what we want to look at is things like industry reports from organizations like IBIS World, IBIS World, Statista, STATISTA, and government databases. You can just do searches for these, and they house tons of statistical data on just about every industry imaginable in every country or every state or whatever, and you can parse it any way you want. So all that information is generally publicly available. There are also industry reports. Most industries have lobbies or whatever else, and they do their own industry reports. So you can look for those. I've done this when I'm going to do a webinar about a particular kind of software. I research the market to see how big the market is, how much people are making doing what my product can help people do. And that way I have statistics to back things up. I'm not just saying, hey, you can make a ton of money with this, or this is a great product. I have stats to show because I've looked up the industry reports. You can just Google this stuff and you can find it all. Look for published market research and trends in your industry. A lot of companies will publish newsletters with trends and statistics about all these different things. For competitor analysis, review competitors' websites. Once you've identified who they are, look at their websites, see how they sell what they sell, right? And how they do it, what their price points are. Look at their social media. See what the feedback is about them. See what the kind of content they make, what their personality is, what their sort of niche is in the market. Customer reviews to see what their strengths and weaknesses are. Those are all things that are going to really clue us into where we have opportunities. Then we want to look at demographic and economic data. Government databases are generally free, and you can find reports there as well. And you can find industry associations and other sources that will help you gather information on your target market's demographics and spending habits. So the takeaway here is, if the idea of market research makes your eyes glaze over, you're not alone. I totally get it. But it's a vital thing to do, especially when starting out, just to verify that we have a viable business with high odds of success. Market research doesn't need to be an exhaustive number crunching drudgery of an experience. It can be fast and easy if we use the online resources available to us. When we do it, we can identify potential problems and solve them in advance, and we can identify potential opportunities that we might not have seen so we can take advantage of them. At a minimum, a bit of research gives us the peace of mind of knowing that we're making sound decisions and that our goals are actually achievable.